Friends, welcome back. Let us continue our discussion on the concept of capital structure. So far, we have also already seen different types of capital structures, and we have also discussed that why capital structure is so important to any business. Let me share my screen with you so that we can discuss the next concept. Next concept is the distinction between capital structure and financial structure. So broadly, we'll be discussing this thing. If you want to read it, you can pause the video. You can find out what is the difference between capital structure and financial structure. The entire thing is written here. You can read it out. I am not going to read it right now. But I'm showing you what is capital structure. If you look, this is the balance sheet of an company, of an entity. So if you look at this portion, you can see this portion, you can see the equity portion and then liability portion. Under this liability, this non-current liabilities are non-currents are normally understood as the long-term finance, long-term borrowings. So these two things, that is equity as well as this non-current liabilities taken together is referred to as capital structure. If we are going to include the short-term liabilities also, then the entire thing, long-term as well as short-term, this will be referred to as your financial structure. So this is the difference between capital structure and financial structure. Hope you have understood it. Okay. So you see, financial structure refers to all components of the finance in the organization, all assets, liabilities, and the capital. It contains both long-term as well as short-term sources of capital, whereas capital structure refers to all long-term sources. So thus capital structure is a part of financial structure. Again, you look at here, this is capital structure and this is your financial structure. You can look at the balance sheet of any entity. You'll be able to understand what is the difference between capital structure and its financial structure. There are many factors that influence capital structure. Your corporate strategy may influence that how much debt and equity ratio you would like to have, whether management wants to keep more control over the capital, whether management is risk averse or it is willing to take more risk. These are the some of the factors which influence the capital structure. Nature of industry, if it's a capital intensive industry, normally they depend more on debts. Then what is your fast capital structure and current capital structure? That will also impact your planned capital structure or the future capital structure. Normally, if the business is at a pioneering stage or at the early stage, then cost of capital will be high. So they go for more equity. If it is an expansion stage, then they go for financial leverage. That means they introduce debt in the capital structure. If it is at stagnation or stabilization stage, then they reduce the financial leverage and save interest costs. So these are some of the possibility in different situations. The finance manager may think of different type of capital structure. Okay. Now, for planning and designing capital structure, we need to learn few more concepts. And these concepts will be helping us to optimize your capital structure. That means arriving at the best capital structure. Best capital structure, there are various aspects to it, but mostly if you think if the cost is least, that means overall cost of capital is least, then you can say that is the optimal capital structure. Right. The other features of optimal capital structure is like this. First one is profitability. So maximum use of leverage should be there at minimum cost. That means to the extent possible, more debt should be there because debt is cheaper. It will minimize the overall cost. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind the risk you are taking. So optimal capital structure should focus on profitability. It should also focus on flexibility. Flexibility means if you do not want a capital at a particular point of time, you should be able to return it back. That is possible in case of debts. Equity It is not possible unless we are planning for a buyback kind of thing. So good capital structure should be profitable, should be flexible, and there should be minimum dilution of control. No shareholder wants that his control over the companies gets diluted. Okay, so that aspect also has to be taken care of. And also good capital structure should look at the solvency aspect. If excess debt is taken, that affects the solvency of the business. That is, in fact, a threat to the solvency. So excess debt is not advisable. Debt within the permissible or tolerable limit is okay. So optimal capital structure is, in fact, the best debt to equity ratio, which will maximize the value of the firm. So you have to very carefully create a balance between the debt and equity so that overall cost of capital can be maximum and the firm's profit can be, the overall cost of capital can be minimum and the firm's value can be maximum. So while designing the capital structure, a finance manager looks at the following aspects. First of all, what is the requirement of capital? How much capital is needed? And how much capital is available from different components? So this much capital is available in the form of debt. This much of capital is available in the form of equity. He should know all this. And he should also know the cost of each such components. And what is the rate of return from the investment? How much return is required? Cost should be within that. Otherwise, it will be a challenge that how to maximize the return with more cost. So when designing the capital structure, he has to keep in the mind that design, first of all, should be functional. It should facilitate the day-to-day working of the farm. Right. That means if suppose you need continuously some money to buy raw material, so sufficient capital should be available for that. Otherwise, it will create a bottleneck in the production process. The design should also be flexible so that if you require, you can have more capital. If you do not require, you can shrink the capital. Design should be also in conformity with the statutory guidelines. Okay, so legal compliance is important thing. So that also has to be compliant. Suppose taking loan beyond equity requires certain approvals of the shareholders. So all these compliances should be taken care of. Now, what you are seeing in the screen is the attributes of a good capital structure or well-planned capital structure. Just you can have a look. A well-planned capital structure should maximize the return, should reduce the risk, should be flexible, and the debt should be within the borrowing capacity so that there will be sufficient future cash flow to honor that debt, to service that debt. And the dilution of control should be minimal. A well-planned capital structure should look at all these things. And if you look at the component of capital structure, you know broadly two things, debt and equity. They are the major structures, major component. When you talk about debt, we refer to the ownership interest. And when you talk about equity, we refer to the ownership interest. Right? It includes share capital, share premium, reserves, all of them forms a part of ownership interest, therefore equity. Debt means the amount owed. That means amount borrowed from outsiders, maybe from individuals, maybe from banks, maybe from financial institutions. It depends. These are the list we can call as the factors governing the capital structure. Or you can say these are the determinants of capital structure. First of all, the farm's cash, which is how much cash the farm is having. That is important. That affects the capital structure. What is interest coverage ratio? Whether with this kind of cash flow, If you're taking a loan, interest can be covered. Debt service coverage ratio or DSCR. That means if you're taking some debt, if you're introducing some debt in the capital structure, whether the debt can be serviced. That means whether sufficient cash flow is there to service that debt. So we can measure it through this ratio. We can find out how much money is due to the debt holders in a particular period and how much cash flow is available with us. That ratio will tell us that whether debt can be serviced or return on investment is one more component. How much return is required? That is important. Accordingly, you can find out, you can think of different sources where cost is within that. Cost is also important. Cost means cost of each component of the capital, like cost of debt, cost of equity, all these things we need to know. And you also need to know what is average cost. Tax rates are also important. That's one more determinant of capital structure. Because debt will bring a tax shield or tax saving. So when deciding the proportion of the debt, you should look into that aspect also. Risk associated in the business is also important. If business is facing a good amount of business risk or operational risk, then finance manager would like to have would like to take low financial risk because operating risk is high. When operating risk is overly high, financial risk should be less so that overall risk can be moderate. So when a person takes debt, it is taking more risk because debt involves a kind of fixed commitment. And one more factor or one more determinant is that control. That means whether control is going to be diluted or not. So these are the determinants of capital structure which you have understood. There are other factors also like flexibility, whether the business wants flexibility in the capital structure. Nature of industry is it's highly capital intensive. So you have to think whether it is possible to arrange that kind of equity or will it be possible to arrange that size of debt. On that basis, will decide what the capital structure. Stock market condition also affect the capital structure, whether it will go for equity or not at a particular point of time. It depends on the stock condition of the stock market. Cash flow timing and projects. So in future, what kind of cash flow the business is projecting and when these cash flows are going to be realized. If you're taking a debt, whether your debt holders will be waiting till that time or so this timing of cash and the projections are also additional determinants for capital structure. Size of the company, rotation cost involved, regulatory framework, all these are also important components. You have to consider all these things, whether it's a big company or a small company. If I issue an equity, what will be my issue cost or rotation cost? What kind of regulations I have to comply? Legal restrictions, there are legal restrictions. So these are the determinants. Then competition in the industry. You have to compare your capital structure with your competitors so that you can understand that whether their cost of capital is high or your cost of capital is high. Accordingly, you may plan to change your capital structure so that it can be low. There are many other issues. For example, whether funds are available, availability of the fund, market condition. All these issues are important or they are determinants of capital structure. So friends, broadly, we got some idea that what is capital structure, what are the determinants of capital structure. So this was the basic foundation to go to the next level. Next level is that if you look at the syllabus, we're going to learn the capital structure theories. There are various theories. Some of the important theories of the capital structure we'll be learning in our next session. Then we'll be coming to relevance and irrelevance of the capital dividend aspect of the capital structure. Okay, with this our this hard you need to post. So today we'll stop here. Thank you very much.